Go ahead, guys. Introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Natalie.
Tell me a little bit more,
Armando.
Natalie.
Oh yeah.
I'm a numerologist, massage therapist, and just kind of exploring life and seeing where it takes me.
You're a human, right?
I am a human.
We were talking about aliens a second ago, so we're just making sure that you're a human.
Sometimes I'm my human self. Yeah.
Yeah. Armando.
Yeah. No, I'm Armando. I'm also a human. And I do stand-up comedy. Yeah. I do stand-up comedy.
Oh, I love this. This is awesome.
Yeah, and Natalie and Armando live in the same city, so maybe they can connect sometime.
Yes, please. If you have a show, let me know. I'm there. I love
that's
comedy.
awesome.
If we're not rushing out of here before then.
Yeah.
You mean rushing out of the city?
No, the state.
Or the state?
The whole state.
Oh,
as
the
a whole.
whole.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah. All right. So as we were talking about before the show, we like to get to kind of a big transformation in your life, and we try to understand your mindset before, and maybe what some of the causes were, maybe what some of the environmental factors that led you to be in that place. And then we tried to understand, like, what was that spark? Because you know how it's like Tony Robbins says, like, you can change in an instant, but like getting to that point where you finally change in the instant could be years in the making, right? So like people think this idea of change has to be this constant thing, but it seems like generally change is usually very sudden, but it takes some major life stuff to get you to that sudden change. Right. So if I'm going to ask you, like, what's one big transformation? I know it's hard to boil it down to one because I feel like every year myself I'm growing, but like, what's a big one that pops in your mind? Like I said, the first thing that comes to your mind is probably the best one.
The biggest transformation was breaking self-limiting belief systems.
Okay, so that's
a huge.
Yeah, and
it's like there's so many, right?
Is this a specific kind of event that happened, or is this more of a general, like, for the last 10 years? Because we're trying to get to like maybe one big event or thing you overcame.
It was a very specific event.
That's great. So why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah. So I was in a very abusive relationship, and I actually imagined it to be like this Prince Charming, damsel in distress. I'm going to be saved. I'm being taken away, and all my problems are going to get solved. But what people including myself forget to realize is that problems travel. They're on a one-way ticket with you wherever you're going,
and nobody can actually solve your problems, right? It's always going to be you.
It's always, and that is actually the biggest part of that, is the ownership in all of it. Like, I could sit here and say, he did this to me, he put me through this, but ultimately I made the choice to go with him.
Yes, 100%.
I made the choice to be there, and I also ultimately made the choice to get out of there, not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually, mentally, and so that was my biggest catalyst. So if anything, he was the gift, part of it. And so it was transformational. It was huge. It was chaotic, but I felt like it had to be broken down before I started to build back up.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna pause you.
Yes.
What I want to do is because we have limited time, because it sounds like the situation itself, we could probably talk for hours. Like, you probably have so much data in your mind and like events and timelines.
Yeah.
Like, let's give us a first succinct timeline, simplest way you can, of like, month one, met this person, did the typical, like, oh, I'm going to be saved, and like all the weird ideas about relationships we have. Right.
Right.
And then you get, then maybe a identifiable point of change would be like, when did that kind of fade off? And like, when did like the real person come out and like the routine set in, and those things that happen in all relationships where we put on our best behavior and then we kind of get comfortable, and then our real behavior comes out. Right. And then from there, though, that the next step is, how long did it take to kind of realize, accept, and change to start the leaving process? Right. Because we're talking about something that could have taken, I don't know, years, months. Like, run us through a quick timeline, and then let's just kind of like maybe hone in on the different phases.
Yeah. So we worked together. I was going to school for massage, and I became a massage therapist. We worked with each other and graduated from school, and I was ready to already move out of California. That was already in my mind. I was like, I'm going to get out of here. And he just happened to cross paths with me, and we started coordinating a plan on how we would do better in another state, his home state. We ended up moving to Florida. My family.
Are you in a relationship at this point?
No.
Oh, so this is just like a, let's go move and take an adventure as friends.
Yeah. Well, no. We started developing a friendship. It eventually evolved into a relationship.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah. So we took it slow too. Like it wasn't like from day to night and then,
Right.
Because my family got to know him and everything, and my friends, everybody was sold. Like he was charming. This was like a Dr. Jekyll and Hyde moment. Like it was very, like he was just charming. And a lot of people call it a narcissist. I had heard the term, but I didn't want to, like, I didn't have that experience,
Right.
So moved across the country, started ultimately the goal was for me to start my massage business out there, and he was going to help me. He encouraged me and all this stuff. But in the meanwhile, I had to take a national test to become a massage therapist to get licensed in Florida. California doesn't require that. So my nerves were just, through the roof. And so it took me a little bit of I want to say a little while. To him, it seemed like forever, but it took me like 3 months to get my feet up and like get the ball rolling on the test. I got the test, I started my massage business. And in that, there was a lot of pressure from him. Like, when are you going to level the F up? When are you going to, like he started like completely flipping from what he had shown himself to be in California. And when I was out there, I didn't have a lot of friends or family. His friends were my friends. But there was like a very interesting dynamic where his friends didn't know him either. Like they had never seen that level of whatever he was, So my family was out here, and there was also like a lot of fear in me about, if I come back, what's my family going to think? I'm going to be a disappointment. Again, I'm 35 or 34. I'm 35. I don't have a career yet. I don't have all these things established. Yeah. And so he became my support system, but he was also my breakdown process,
Yeah. Well, it sounded like you definitely formed some kind of codependency in that.
Oh,
and
yeah.
So when you say he started becoming aggressive, like he wanted you to make more money, or it became like a teacher student type of weird dynamic. Like,
so he's a very money-driven person. Like for him, money is everything, status and money and relationships. If you're not at his level, then you're an embarrassment.
Oh boy.
So that's why he was like, when are you going to level up? But in public, it was different, because he would like, I was the arm on the charm on the arm, like, oh my God, she's very, driven and determined and blah, blah, blah. But behind closed doors, it was like, when are you going to level the F up? When are you going to, like Jekyll and Hyde, I'm telling you, so weird. And because I thought, this man is smart with money. He is executive director of a hospice, like he's just like, he was up there in his rank, and he knew business well. So I thought, maybe he's just really trying to push me to do better for myself. I was starting to gaslight myself, because there was a lot of things.
So that was the story you were telling yourself.
I was telling myself this.
So okay. So you said you started to think about going back. So there had to have been some kind of inflection point where you're like happy and everything seems okay. And maybe you like let a few comments go, to then it's like becoming too much and you're like thinking about other options. And then how long did you stay in that state?
So initially, like after the 4th month, there was something that happened that we got in a huge fight, and he started packing up my stuff, and he was saying like really horrible things. And my family they finally got a glimpse of it, and they were like, no, you need to come back.
Yeah.
And so I was like, my parents booked a U-Haul, like I was ready to go. But there was something in me that still said, if you go back, you're going to be a disappointment again. So you can either stay here, tough it out, and like make something of yourself, or you can go back like with your tail between your legs and just continue to be that thing that everybody expects you to be, which is a failure. Right.
So what does that process look like? Big fight, your parents are making plans. It's actually great you have that support system, because that's awesome that you have that, right?
Absolutely.
But then you had some limiting blocks yourself, to where you felt like you would regress if you left, right? Because if you you couldn't really move out of the place, right? It sounded like he was financially supporting you.
Yeah, he was financially supporting me.
So
a certain time.
So at that time, it wasn't like, oh, I'll just get my own apartment. Like that was kind of a hard option.
And going back to the codependency, like I didn't even want to imagine me getting my own apartment, because I didn't want to live by myself in a state where I had no friends or family. So that was like, my attachment was really strong. I was like, he's an abuser, but he's also my support system.
Yeah, psychological abuse, it sounds like, too. Like
Yeah,
manipulation.
absolutely.
So what happened after the fight? Like give us a timeline.
So he says he's going to get help. I believe it.
So he starts apologizing and doing the typical, like, I'll change.
I'll change. Yeah,
like you could write a book for the typical relationship nonsense.
I followed everything, all of it down to a T. Absolutely. And then I stayed. And you know what? I will say that it fueled me to get on the ball about passing the test, because shortly after I passed the national test, I landed a job. I landed a couple of jobs. And I started like moving forward, and I was like, okay, you know what? This is what it was. It was just a little pressure. It's a little heat in the kitchen. It's fine. I'm cooking now, you know?
Yeah.
But it started to happen again, like these patterns, these things, and this, like, you're not, you know, this, or you're not that, you know, how many women would kill to be with me. And it's like,
Jesus,
breakdown. And
oh my God.
Eventually got to a point where I believe these things. I was like, I'm a sad excuse for him. Like, this is just pathetic. Like, it was bad. And so, man, I was so broken. Like, it was so bad. I believe these things that and this is like pretty harsh to say, but like there was days where I would think, like, maybe today will be the day that I die. Maybe today will be the day that I die. Yeah. And I would pray for it. I would be like, I'm so freaking cowardly that I couldn't do it. Like, I'm just hoping that the universe just drops a boulder on me right now. And so I would drive around. I would drive around and think
these thoughts.
Yeah. And like hope that something would happen to me, because I just couldn't do it myself.
Wow. That's so,
it was hard. Yeah. So
yeah.
What happened next then? You get to that point. Is that rock bottom, or is it not rock bottom?
It's not rock bottom. And I'll tell you why, because I felt so, my self-esteem was so non-existent that I didn't really care anymore what happened. Like, I thought, you know what, whatever happens to me now, like, that's what I deserve. But again, from that mentality of victimhood, like, woe is me, this is happening to me, life is happening to me, I have no, you know, role in this. No, that's like where the big switch is now. Like, I understand like what my role, how I made these choices, how I got myself there, and how I got myself out of there. But no, there was an event that happened where 2 of his childhood friends witnessed it. And it was bordering on violent. Like, he could have hurt me and he didn't, because they were there. And it was like the universe sped up, like everything, like time just sped up. They were like, you're not going back to him. We're getting you the hell out of there. You're going back home. This isn't going to happen. Like, you're not going to be one of those people that ends up on a Netflix special or, you know, Dateline or whatever. Cause that's what it sounded like. I had found out that he had he was trying to buy a gun, you know, like there was a lot of other things. Like, when I moved out, when I finally got there and got my stuff, I found like gashes on the door from like knives he had taken to the door. Like, he's just very violent person, very violent. So, and had those people not pushed me out of the situation, I don't think I would have done it on my own.
Yeah, it's almost like an intervention.
Yeah, because it was divine intervention, actually. And the reason I say that is because a couple of weeks prior to that situation, I had found myself like on the shower floor crying and saying, God, I don't have the strength or the courage anymore. I need you to take the wheel. I need you to get me the hell out of here, because I am so beat down that I can't do it myself, and I'm too cowardly. But I trust in you, and I trust in the process. I know that you're going to figure out a way to get me out of here.
Right.
And then 2 weeks later, this event, which seemed to be like chaotic, it was out in public, it was just bad all around, happens. But that was the catalyst, you know.
But why was that any different from another time? Because I've heard of these events before multiple times. People, I mean, you have women that will be physically beaten and then make excuses to why they misbehaved or whatever, and like
for years.
You have like obviously crazy extremes in this regard, and then you have everyone in between where you could tell yourself the story, well, he didn't hit me, or, you know, he stopped himself or whatever. Why was this time different in your mind? Like, what were you telling yourself?
I think it was that there was a knowing, like there was an inner knowing, like and I know this sounds weird, but it was almost like an out of body experience. Like I had a feeling something big was coming. I didn't know what. It wasn't just on my personal like life, in my personal life. I had a feeling that there was like a collective something happening. Like there was a shift that was coming, like a wave, like I was watching the tsunami come. I couldn't figure out where from or what it was bringing. And so I think intuitively there was a lot of dynamics. It was my own personal intuition, having asked for divine intervention and it being given to me like shortly after. And then also how quickly the people that were involved coordinated and came together to get me the hell out of there.
And you
like
just let it happen, basically.
Yeah. And I surrendered. That was it. It was like a surrender.
Do you think that would have been the same if those people weren't around you?
Good question.
Because you would have had to pack up your stuff. You would have had to like figure out a way to go here. You basically would have done everything by yourself, and maybe you would have started telling yourself stories about why. Well, he's just human, and he means the
You're
best.
absolutely right. No, I don't think I would have done it on my own.
Yeah, but you did surrender to it, so it was a decision, but it was more of a passive decision than like an active one where you're like, I got to get out of here, get my stuff, leave fast.
Yeah. Like it was adrenaline. Like adrenaline was really pushing me. You know, because I felt like if I stopped to think. If I stopped 1 minute to think,
you would tell yourself.
I would second guess. I would pull myself out of there. Absolutely.
Right. So did you leave immediately, and have you seen him since?
I went into hiding for about 2.5 weeks.
Went into hiding. Sounds like it was.
Yeah. My friend.
It's protection.
It's like a movie. Yeah.
It did, because like I actually had to hide out at a friend's house.
Right.
About an hour away in St. Augustine.
Yeah.
So I had to hide out there for 2.5 weeks.
Did you go to the beach at all? Because that's my favorite beach in Florida.
Oh yeah.
St. Augustine.
Oh my God.
It's
I love St. Augustine.
It.
I love St. Augustine. Yeah.
It's a good place to hide out.
Yeah. And no, it's interesting because in that time, my family had already witnessed me cry wolf once. So they were like, you're not coming home. We have a feeling that you're going to work things out with him. So we're going to figure you out later, because they have their own stuff going on.
Yeah, of course.
So I was scared. I was terrified because I hadn't told them the extremity of where this had reached, you know, like the abuse and the violence and all that.
Yeah.
And so I was hiding out for 2 weeks. And during those 2 weeks, I will say, like, my body started to do some really effed up stuff. Like I would I couldn't fall asleep because I was terrified that he would be there. Or when I would fall asleep, I'd be terrified to wake up and see him standing there. So my body would jolt. I would lose sleep. I had like some major PTSD, physical PTSD, like triggers.
Yep.
And then that's all the stuff that I had to unpack. Like there is a lot that I had to leave behind, but coming back to California, I didn't realize how much emotional baggage I had to unpack, even though I had very little to unpack tangibly. You know? So
let's now focus on the transformation.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're hiding out. You're not going to just like wake up the next day or the next even 2 weeks and just like be a new person. And you shared in Clubhouse when we met kind of some other transformations you went through. Like, that was the 2020 transformation. So like you've gotten to a place that it sounds like you have this growth mindset, and it sounds like the person you're describing then is not the person I'm talking to right now. That's kind of what I'm getting at. So this was obviously a big event in your life. Run us through what that looked like from a healing and growth perspective. How did your mindset shift? Like, and maybe you can even identify something that happened or a decision you made or a way of thinking or a timeline to where you kind of went from like victimhood to just like empowerment.
Yeah. So when I got here, I was like, I realized the physical stuff, like the not being able to sleep, my body jolting, the nerves and the shakiness and all that.
Right.
So I was like, you know what? I got to do something to control my breath. So I started doing Wim Hof's breath work.
That's awesome.
Like right off the bat. Like it was almost instant. Like I think I had been here for like a week and a half, and I realized that my breathing was erratic and like I was getting these panic attacks, and I was like, I got to control this. I got to figure this out. I started doing breath work, Wim Hof, and then I started doing meditation because I knew that I had to reprogram the wiring in my brain, right?
No, yeah, you're absolutely right.
but it's weird because I didn't know about all these other things. Like I'm just kind of like a wing it kind of person. Like I don't read manuals. I'm more hands-on. So I'm like, I'm just going to put these things to practice. So I started doing Wim Hof. I started doing meditation. I started creating a new pattern so that I broke the other patterns of trauma and all this stuff.
Right.
And then I started eating better too, because I was like, that this has to be like, obviously I know that what you put in your body makes you, you know, it helps you feel better. And if you feel better, then you're doing better.
Yep.
Totally.
So I started doing a lot of meditation. And it felt lonely because I didn't have anybody again to like lean on and say, am I doing this right?
Yeah,
so that was also part of the transformation, breaking
Yeah.
away from what I was used to, which was being codependent on someone, like majorly dependent. And now I'm doing things on my own and not asking for help deliberately so that I'm empowering myself. So that was also part of the empowerment in the process, making sure that I'm doing this first on my own without having to ask for help.
And that's huge because you're taking complete control over, like, you know, not, you can't even say pass or fail, but like whether I do this right or not, I'm going to take the steps forward to make sure that I'm trying to do this and I'm in this own journey with myself to figure it out, you know, and a lot of people don't do that. Like people are scared of you know, with simple things like starting a website, a pot, whatever. They're like, I don't have enough.
That's
like,
what I want to ask about.
Information.
I want to ask about that because like most people alive today, and I've been thinking about this a lot, like most people alive today have the intelligence to do anything. Like they see people on TV that are successful, that are this or that. And like most people could do the same thing.
Right.
They know what they need to do generally too. Like it's no secret that like athletes train a certain way, you eat a certain way, you have a certain body. Like if you want 6-pack abs, like you can do, like go to the gym or do some stuff outside. Like this is not like secret knowledge, right? Yet why are so few people taking action? And this is now actually why I've rebranded the name of the podcast, A Better Human. I used to focus more on health and nutrition, and I feel like it became an echo chamber because I'm telling people information that they probably already know or get, but what are they doing? Are they doing anything? And it felt just almost a waste of time because such a small percent of people actually take information and take action in their life. So anytime I hear somebody saying they started like something like meditation or like eating healthy and exercise, these are things that require a long time preference because you can't meditate one day and then like wake up tomorrow and be a new person. You can't go to the gym once or eat one healthy meal and wake up tomorrow. You have to have a time preference that extends it out for long enough. And there has to be some kind of mechanism to get you there if you've never done that. Right. And so some people are naturally longer time preference than others. Myself is one of those. Like I just work out. I've always have. And I've seen friends that kind of wax away with it over the years. And I'm always like, why? How can I help them? How can I help them? And for me, it's always something in the mind. So I want to understand what you were thinking as you're doing these things. Like you started meditation, you started a breathing technique. Like that's kind of esoteric. A lot of people don't even know about that. Was there certain reinforcements where you like felt better immediately and like you got like a good feedback loop, or was it just like, I don't know what else to do and I'm just going to kind of commit to this blindly for 60 days? Like what was the point that you got to where it stuck? Because like they say with habits, when it sticks, then it becomes way easier to do. And it just is likely you'll do something for a long time. Right. So is there something that helped you, or what was the mechanism for you that kept you doing it?
That kept me doing it, honestly, the Wim Hof app gives you like
awesome.
like how you extend like your time, your
it was gamification, right? It kind of got you into it.
Yeah, because I was like, oh, you know what? I can hold, it's not even holding your breath, but exhaling and like being able to sustain that. Like I was up to 3 minutes and 33 seconds, which for me was like,
that's awesome.
Well, one, that's like an angel number, right? Like a lot of people talk about angel numbers, but I was like, holy hell, like I didn't know I could do that. So visual and knowing that I'm the one who did the work and did it repeatedly. And I had this goal, even though it was a goal that not a lot of people would think like, oh my God, huge achievement. But for me, as somebody who's working from scratch all over again, you know, after clean slating it, that was a huge accomplishment. And I was like, you know what, if I can do this, I'm sure that I can do a lot more other things, you know, and I started that. And so that was empowering. I couldn't even do the cold showers. I'm going to be honest. I didn't do the cold showers. I couldn't do the cold showers.
I don't like cold showers either, but I know they're good for us. I just don't like
They're the worst.
So,
Sorry, Wim, but I love you. But
Yeah.
What was that?
The hyperventilating you get into when it hits you, you're like,
Right.
it's rough. It's rough.
But here's the thing though, when I go out camping or hiking or any of that, I
Right.
love to go into lakes and rivers, even if they're freezing cold.
Right.
Because
right.
but it's like a once and done deal. Like, I'm like,
That's
all
gotta
right, this
be-
is good.
That's got to be something primal though, like being out in nature. There's
Right.
something about turning on your shower when it's on cold and you're like, I hate this. This
Well,
is the
there's also
worst.
the conditioning that for your whole life, you've like stuck your finger in the shower to see if it's hot enough.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
you
yeah.
know
Like,
you can control it, right? It's just like,
yeah.
it's like your
Yeah.
brain. I mean, if you think about it, habits are wired through synaptic
Yeah.
connections. Okay.
Right.
Totally.
And so two things here. If your brain is just by default, it does a shower a certain way, like
Yeah.
to do the shower the opposite way, which is it's literally the opposite way. You're going in cold first. Like
You're
your
breaking
body's
the
like,
habit.
what's going on here? Okay. So that's one thing.
Yeah.
Two,
Why?
for Natalie, the lesson here is you were able to find a very small micro goal, and that became a feedback loop for you. Okay.
Yeah.
Feedback loops are extremely important. Now, most people, they need some kind of feedback loop because they don't have a long time preference. They can't think long term. And that's just a human thing. Like, this is nature. Like, we had to go out and find food and eat it immediately. We didn't have like food preservation or whatever. And you know, nature programmed us to do things to kind of have an immediate reward, and then for it to go away, and then we have to go get it again, right? Like, that's the cycle of nature. Whereas our environment today, we can control everything. And so the hot and cold water is actually a good example of that. But you were able to find a small goal, maybe by accident, that empowered you, right? Because you're like, I did that. Wow. And then it's rewiring not only the habit of the breathing, and you're getting more into that, but it's rewiring how you think about progress, right? And how you think about your feedback loops. And they like, well, maybe I can like do this with something else. And then, so you probably did with other things, maybe meditation, maybe it was like, maybe meditation is like a time thing or whatever. And maybe you tracked it, maybe food and fitness, like you can obviously quantify these things, and everyone's different. Some people need like little loops. Some people get high off like the actual workout. Like, for some people, it's a fear of like, they don't ever want to be overweight again, or they don't want to be unhealthy, you know, most of it's a combination of that. And this is why it's always so fascinating to go into these stories. Cause like, I always want to hear what are the different mechanisms for people, and then try to converge on like some of the, you know, first principles. And one of them is having very small goals, like people that create big goals, like, and they don't really connect it to daily actions. It's just pie in the sky dream. Like, you know, that's why they say, put your shoes and your workout clothes out the night before, and you're like 10 times more likely to go to the gym, because you don't have to make a decision about like what to wear or whatever, like little things like that. Or doing like one push-up a day. And then if you do 10, that's great, but your goal is 1. So you can always do 1, right? Or going to the gym for 2 minutes when you're really tired. If you just go there and show up, you'll probably do a 30 to 40 minute workout. It works every time.
That's true.
And so I've actually trained my biology so that if I eat a really big meal, let's say I have a cheat meal and I'm just not feeling great, for me, that's a cue to go work out. And it's not because like I'm like trying to work off shame. It's like, I know my digestion will improve. I know my stomach will feel better afterwards, and I will actually help mitigate some of the damaging effects of the food I just ate. So it's now like not even a thought for me. I don't like struggle with myself. Should I work out? Oh my gosh. Like, I'm so far beyond that kind of victim narrative and that self-conflict narrative. And it's just like, don't feel good, work out. And then every time I work out, I have more energy and I feel better afterwards. And so then I further reinforce the connections in my brain, because now I feel better after I do that.
Exactly. And you've gotten yourself to that point from that, you know, when you were in the trenches, essentially, of like, all right, show up, you know, and now that I'm here, then I'll probably do something. It's that first like actionable step that gets you to what you're saying. It connects that pie in the sky goal where you go, I'm going to show up to the gym. My big goal is health, fitness, whatever, and have a good habit of working out. But you got to take those actionable steps to get you there. And that's the most important.
Well, it's also
part.
called the action. I call it the action muscle. So
that's awesome.
The times that you don't want to do something, this is another kind of heuristic I've built into my brain. When you really don't want to do something, if you do it, you win 10x. Why? Because you've now taken the muscle of like the kind of the bitching muscle, the complaining muscle, and you've strengthened that muscle to action. Right. Yeah. Instead of letting that get stronger, every time you don't take action when you don't want to, the muscle gets stronger.
Yeah.
Right. Every time you take action when you don't want to, the action muscle gets stronger. Right. And so like, if you just think about literally, like I imagine like a bicep on one hand, like action muscle, like weak ass, not action muscle. It's like, I always want to strengthen the one that gets me there, you know? And like all of goal setting, accomplishment and everything, it's always about figuring out how to have a bias for action and to do it and to be consistent. nothing else matters. It's not about intelligence. It's like it's not secret information. It's just literally showing up longer. Like successful people show up longer and more consistently than people that aren't successful. And people that aren't successful, they just quit too soon. Like it's just as simple as that. They just quit too soon on whatever they want to achieve.
And it's like sometimes taking that actionable step, because a lot of times, you know, taking action isn't just not taking action. Like, oh, I just didn't do that thing today. You know, what happens in that time when you don't take action? A lot of us get into like these really
it can actually have like a downward spiral into other things and bad behaviors and more laziness.
Exactly.
And that's why it's more of like a mental muscle, right? It's like an action versus unaction, like an action bias muscle. Like when you strengthen that muscle, better things happen. It's kind of like saying yes to opportunities, even when you're kind of afraid. Like the more you say yes to things that make you afraid, the easier it gets, and the more things that happen, and then exponentially your life just like compounds.
Gross.
Right.
Yeah.
So
that time you took to do the breathing exercises, you know, you could have been sulking about the loss that you had, where you were like, well, I'm going to fill something, you know, fill that time with something positive, something that's, you know, I mean, you're just growing exponentially. It's amazing.
So it's interesting you bring that up, because the other things I could have been doing. So one thing I did when I got, several things that I did, but one of the main things that I did was I got rid of stuff, because I still came back with some stuff. And I was like, you know what? I'm only going to have in my room what I need.
Yeah.
Not all this extra stuff. So I started selling things to get money to get myself like a dresser drawer, so I could put my clothes in there so that they wouldn't be on the floor. I got myself a shoe rack so my shoes could be somewhere instead of being sprawled out all over the floor. I sold my television because I'm like, it's a crack box. I don't need distractions. I need to focus on myself. Sold the television, got money to be able to buy myself some groceries, like things like that. And I was like, almost kind of like, I created my own little survival mode. Even though I had my family who was able to help me and support me if I needed, but they were like, why are you going into solitude after what's happened? And I said, because this is what I need. I need solitude. I need no distractions, and I need rehab. Okay. This pandemic, that's when I believe that's what you heard in Clubhouses, that I was talking about how 2020, a lot of people see it as like this horrible thing. And yes, it can be perceived that way. But for me personally, I saw it as rehab, because it was a form of detox. I needed to purge out all the shit that sorry, can I say shit? I just said it. I just purged out all this shit that I was, still carrying, like the dead weight, and that wasn't going to be conducive to my growth. So I was like, I got to start shedding pounds. That was my mentality. So sell my TV, sell my distractions, only have the books that I want to read, only do the things that I really want to do. And if I'm bored, guess what? I have things that I really want to do or invest my time in that are going to be conducive to my growth. And so I got rid of a lot of stuff. And that's when my family was like, why are you sitting in a box? And it's like, because this is what I need right now for myself.
100%.
This is what works for me.
It could have been
bad. To unpack there. There's so much
it could have been bad. I think it depends on, it sounds like you were pretty self-aware that you knew that's what you needed. Whereas like for a lot of people sitting in a room, it's like probably not good for them. Right. So you also altered your environment quite a bit. So like what was the impetus for that? Like a lot of people don't even consider that. That's actually a very important concept. Because humans, I mean, really any organism adapts to its environment. You become your environment. You become the things you let in your life. You become the people you're around, the ideas that you think about, the content you consume, right? It's just huge. And if you look at modern society, most people are just consumers of things passively that show up in front of their eyeballs or their ears. And they're not consciously controlling things, right? And it's crazy. Like that's why most people on their devices, they are the product, and the device himself is using them. So why did you think to control your environment that way? And also, why did you think you needed to be alone? Like, what is that? Like, are you more? Is that because you know your personality more? Like, because you also sound like a social person at the same time. So,
I'm a socially skilled introvert. That's a funny thing, because I love
you're an ambivert.
People.
You're like
ambivert.
Me. You need isolation. After intense bouts of extroversion, you got to go back, retreat, and then you come out of your shell, then you go back.
Contraction, expansion. Yeah, absolutely. So for me, I know it was interesting because I was taking like a sort of leap of faith, because I knew that I was scared of being alone. you know, because I had been so codependent on my ex-partner. But I was like, you know what? I've been doing this freaking thing for how many years now, and it hasn't yielded results. It hasn't yielded positive results. So I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to do completely different. And it has to give me a new outcome, right? Like it has to. Like if I'm doing the same thing over and over, isn't that like the definition of insanity?
Of insanity,
yes. Well, it's expecting a different result.
Expecting a different result. And so I thought, you know what? I'm just going to like crumble this whole thing up out the window. I need to be alone. I want to see what I'm like alone. I need to know myself alone, without partnership, without influences. And that's why I stripped away my environment. I was like, and also me personally, I just think television is horrible. It's horrible. It's garbage. You know, it's it's programming, because that's what they're doing. They're programming you. So I'm like, you know what? I need to deprogram. I need to unplug. I am done. Like it was a moment where I was just like, this is it. This is it. And that's what I think we talked about earlier. Like there's like this thing that happens. It's like instant change, or like something that just catapults you. It was that, like the knowing that I was just so fed up with it and tired of the same results, because I've been doing the same thing and those results weren't gonna help me grow anymore. It was outdated. You know, I needed like to repot a new plant, and that was it.
Yeah. That's great. So this, I think we're getting a fuzzy picture of the timeline. So 2020, obviously you had, you know, it helped you do some other things, and maybe was part of the catalyst for your growth and whatever. But explain to us now, as we close out, what is it like for you now? And do you find yourself, I don't know, leaning towards some of those old habits? Like do some of those old thoughts like pop their ugly head in every so often, you know, or you like finding certain guys you're attracted to, you know, you shouldn't be like, you know, or are you a completely different person?
Which is funny, because now there's like this sort of like, I don't want to say, like, I don't know if it's confidence or what it is, but I have a very, and it's not like I have a checklist that you guys need to meet before, you know, I even consider you. It's more like, look, the way I see it now is like, if I'm in a relationship, if I'm in a partnership, that's time invested into this person that's going to take time away from me. And really right now I'm in a place in my life in this moment that I want it to be about me. I want to invest in myself, because I want to show up 100% and full and complete to a relationship. Because the other thing that happens is people go into relationships thinking, I want this person to complete me. This is going to be my better half. F that noise. I am my whole everything. Like I'm not coming in half-ass on anything. And it's not fair for the person who would be in this partnership with me to have to take responsibility for my own crap. Like, does that make sense? So that's why
you just checked like every box of like the correct, you know, truly it's like, you know, you don't really look into that, you know, it's not up to the other person to reparent you or to do this or do that. And, you know, you're taking a deliberate action. It's like, you know, Colin brought up cheat meals. It's like with people who are on a long-term health journey and they're trying to regain their health, much like a relationship, much like anything else, a cheat meal for you to not downward spiral has to be a deliberate thing. And for you to take this time deliberately to go, no, this time's for me. It's okay. I'm not being selfish. Like this time is for me, whether I, you know, want to go do something on my own, you know, grow in this, it's this time for you. And it's going to feel that much better because you made, you know, you put up that boundary, you took this time deliberately and made the choice, you know, it's about living like really intentionally. You're making, you know,
let me push back a little bit though. Let me play devil's advocate, because that's what I like to do.
I love it.
So I've heard this a lot. And obviously my perspective is the male perspective. Your perspective is the female perspective. And it sounds like, and it feels like that the female perspective, you have to be more sensitive to this because it's easier to maybe get lost in someone else, for, you know, for lack of another word, or it's easier to become like too enamored or invested or whatever. But I've seen guys that can do this too. Like, I don't think I think it's agnostic to sex. I mean, you see that, you know, especially when you're younger, like your early 20s in high school, you know, those friends that disappear when they get a girlfriend or boyfriend, and you like don't hear from anymore. You're like, what? And then the second it implodes, they're available all the time. right?
Bro,
And they have all the time in the world.
I'm free tonight. Yeah.
Yes.
Armando.
Right. So it's like that. So that's my preface disclaimer. I should say.
Yeah.
But there was a quote I heard recently that was, if you want a happy relationship, you need two happy people.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so I'm also thinking, like, as I was thinking about that, if you want a functional, confident, like well-balanced relationship, you need two confident, well-balanced, independent minded people, right? Like you literally are you need two equal, at least in the big principles. Like you don't have to have the same interests or whatever, but you have to have the same kind of core foundational principles and constitution as a human, like to have a good relationship. Because if you don't, that one of those humans that is suffering from the things they're trying to work through, they're going to project it and offload it onto the other person. There's almost no way to avoid doing it.
Absolutely.
Right. And then the way this person responds is like, who knows? Some people do better with this. Some people do worse. Maybe it turns into a codependent thing. Maybe it turns into some weird power struggle. So you have a pretty good head on your shoulders, Natalie, I would say. And I guess I would I don't even know if this is advice or a question or maybe something to explore. I found that if you are brutally honest with people up front, like if you were just saying, hey, listen, I'm an independent person. I need my time and space. I'm not the type that's going to like be available every day. I'm not going to be texting on my phone every day. Like I'm going to live my life. Some days I might not text you back for a couple hours. Like if you basically set a precedent for the way you are and what they can expect, I've found that most people, even if they're not really great at all those things or even necessarily like them, they will be able to at least adapt to them and kind of respect them from the get-go. It's just like they say, communication is everything. Communication is everything because you're usually just trying to tell people what to expect so they're not like letting their imagination go wild. Like, why aren't they texting me back? Oh my gosh, I haven't heard from a day. Do they not like me anymore? Are they are they having big orgies somewhere else? Like, what's going on? Like the crazy things that our brains go to, right? Like the amount of things that the human brain can make up, especially when it comes to romantic relationships, is like insanity, right? It's insane. Totally. We're literally insane. That's why they say like you're kind of crazy to be in love or whatever. So I guess my question or statement or whatever, and I'd like to hear your perspective is like, if you have a pretty solid grasp of what you're doing and you're very upfront about that, and you're not out trying to find somebody to complete you, and you communicate to other people that you're not going to complete them, right?
Right.
It might be hard to find the person. Like, I'm not saying this is easy by any means, because like, people are crazy.
You just cut your list down. You just like, you trimmed all the fat.
Right. But I believe that we should almost want to try to keep people in our life. Cause like if your long-term goal is to like, let's say have a family or be in a relationship or whatever, I just don't know if I buy the kind of technique where it's like all me alone. Then and then like one day I want to date and then I got to go through that whole rigmarole and I got to learn all these things and like do all these different things. And like, there's this app and that app. And I just feel like it's a little bit too much of a black and white mindset. And I think we're better off trying to maybe learn more about ourselves and what we want and don't want by kind of like at least having our foot in the pool a little bit. Right. Yeah. So I don't know. That's just that's my thought on that.
Yeah. I think there's always going to be like a happy middle ground for both people. But again, you have to have two very self-aware people who are willing to work with each other's differences and respect each other's differences and understand that you're not there to change one another. That's the thing. That's another thing that going into relationships, people have this expectation or attachment that, oh, well, once they get to know me or once I'm in their life, they're going to start changing or they're going to start becoming better. Or you only have to become better for yourself. That's me. That's my personal opinion. Like, I feel like you really have to become better for yourself, because if you're doing it for other people, you start to grow resentment. There's, all kinds of other things that develop under the surface, and because we're human and we're perfectly flawed, we don't address a lot of these issues very directly. There's a lot of like beating around the bush. So it's always great when you have two very self-aware people who can find a middle ground and understand that they're there as a partnership and not there to change each other. And that's
what about you though? Because
oh
man, let me think.
Say it, Colin. Spit it out. Spit it out. Get it to me direct.
I guess it feels like if you feel when people say the line, "I'm focusing on myself right now," it makes what I hear is they're afraid they can't control themselves.
Oh, I see
You
what
know,
you mean.
you
Okay,
see what I
yeah.
mean?
I
So,
can see that. I can see that.
and I think that if you get too much into that and then like you try to reflip it, because so a good friend of mine, Elsa, she's a dating coach, and she's got people that they focus on their career for years, they make all this money, and then they like want a family, and they think they can just like basically overnight like go on some apps and like they're gonna find that. And they get very, very frustrated, sometimes for long periods of time. And like that's kind of tragic, right? And like I just feel like it's much better, just like personal development is not like a once a year thing or once a month thing. Like it's literally daily, right? Like when you're really into personal development and growing, it's a daily process. And you know that, you really can't let up, right? I feel like building a good, like sustainable relationship, especially in our traditional world with all the craziness that goes on and technology and everything, it's like you want to kind of be like learning and leveling up consistently forever.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because like 50% divorce rate. And I mean, I have my opinions on monogamy. That's more of a personal discussion, but it's like, there's a lot of things that are making it hard to really find like happily ever after in relationships, right? Especially the way society does it. So I've just found that so here's another good thing I thought of. So Naval talked about this. Naval Ravikant, one of my favorite like living philosophers today. He said that you should be very, very selfish at the beginning of a relationship, because then people know what to expect from you.
Correct.
So if you're like what I said, like in selfish / just being who you are,
Correct.
I don't have a negative connotation on that at all. Like if I was dating right now and I would say, I'm an entrepreneur, I set my schedule, I'm not on my phone all day. And then you started expecting me to do those things, like
it's easier.
I wouldn't be talking to you anymore. Like they're just kind of, it's a, what's the word? When you can't adjust it, it's like, deal breaker, right? Like so selfish / deal breaker, kind of the same thing. Like you should be as selfish as possible with your preferences so they know who you truly are, so that you don't go through some fake honeymoon phase that wears off in 3 months. And then you fall into some toxic relationship, which happens all the time.
Correct.
Yeah. So that's just my thought on that. Maybe you should get out there.
Interesting. I like that, because here's what I'll tell people and I say this to people in friendships, not just like relationships, like, intimate relationships, and this is what I had to do last year. And it was triggering for me, but then I realized it was triggering for me because I was trying to force people to change and see it my way. Is when people meet me or they want to develop a friendship or relationship or whatever it is, I tell them, here's what is guaranteed. Okay. Right off the bat.
Yep.
I am always at one point in your life going to disappoint you. You cannot have expectations of me. If you have expectations of me, I guarantee that you will be disappointed.
Yes, that's very wise.
I promise you.
Yeah.
And people split. And I'm like, okay, that means
but that's good. That's you filtering out the gunk, basically.
Yeah.
And then I'm okay with that, because then I'm like, okay, you know what? It's not personal. It's not personal at all. It's just telling me that they're not at a level of awareness where they're willing to work with that. And that's okay, because that's their journey too. If I were to sit here and be like, oh, well, what a douchebag. No, that's me judging their journey and at the capacity in which they can operate at that moment in their life. And that's not for me to judge or say.
Well, it's personal for you though.
Yeah.
Because it is who you are, right? So again, even if you kind of think about how you're trying to explain that, you're explaining it to a culture that is so self-absorbed and narcissistic that like the idea that anybody wouldn't be a right fit for us, how dare they? The reality is like 99 out of 100 people that you could date, or 999 out of 1,000, whatever, like 999 of them are not going to be a match. Correct. You might be sexually attracted to them or whatever, but it doesn't mean you're going to be in a good relationship. Just like a lot of people I meet in everyday life, I don't want to be friends with them. Like I don't want to talk to them that much. I'm sorry, this is just a reality.
It's so true. I get it.
I like people that are uplifting, big ideas, smile. I don't watch sports. I don't go to sports bars. Like there's just a certain demographic of people I don't spend time with.
That's my attention. I was like, you're so alpha male. I would think that.
But
I'm like nerd alpha. Like
that's exactly it. Like
ideas sports, alpha. Yeah.
I was funny that you mentioned that. This morning I was like, I was there's a friend that I get online with sometimes, and I'll play like video games with him or whatever, right? Like you're hanging out, and he'll always have like a game on in the background, so I could always hear it. And I tell him all the time,
like a sports game.
Yeah, and I'm like, bro, can you shut that off? He's like, I'm trying to get the scores, bro. I'm like,
then mute it at least.
Really? Yeah, I know.
Have you been to people's houses where you eat food, or it's like a party, and the TV is just like on
It's
and nobody's
on,
watching
dude.
it,
That
I go find the remote and mute it.
insane.
Like I go alter my environment. I don't give a fuck if I upset somebody. I will find the remote and I'll turn that shit off. Or to be really sneaky, I alter my environment. To be really sneaky, I'll find the router. I'll turn the fucking router off. They wouldn't even know what happened. They don't know what's not going on. like steal
Michael
the AC
Scott
adapter
in
or
The
something.
Office. Yeah.
Oh
You're like Michael Scott in that Office episode where he just like shuts the power off. He's like, yeah, this party's lame. Let's just go. Let's leave.
No, I mean, dude,
Yeah.
I'm a big believer not wasting time or
Totally.
in trying to alter your environment. And so many
totally
people just passively accept what's around them. That's
Dude, once like the car conversation and the sports conversation, I'm like, I'm out.
Yeah.
Goodbye. Goodbye.
Well,
I'm like, I have a personality.
so what I do,
I don't care about these things.
I will try to change the subject though.
Yeah,
like if somebody's like bitching or like get into negativity, like I'll try to change the subject, but and then if I can't, I will leave.
Yeah. And
You
that
know,
would be that's the alpha male aspect where you're like, no, I have a fucking choice. Excuse me. I have a choice, you know. I think that's what you know, that's something I learned in my, you know, my current relationship with my wife, where like, you know, the alpha aspect isn't, and it's not something you like strive like, oh, I'm an alpha male. You walk around that way, but you know, it truly is making your own choice, setting boundaries with other people, and letting them know that, you know, that they're not going to be able to, you know, whether you can remove yourself from a situation or change the subject of conversation, what have you. You know?
Well, it's also not, it's not you have a choice. Everything is your choice.
Correct. You're right. My bad.
No, but I'm not discounting what you're saying. I'm expanding it. I'm clarifying it because that's people think I have a choice, which means by default you sit passively by until you get basically annoyed enough to choose. But
correct,
that's a choice to do that if you're going to do that. I just don't make that choice. Like, so obviously some things with some people, I'm gonna guest somebody's house, you know, or whatever. I'd like do everything I can to not be a nuisance and like not be loud and do things like that. Right. But it's like it's still all choice. So.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, we could obviously talk for a lot. Natalie, I'd love to have you on as a frequent guest. You bring great energy to us, and you balance out the maleness here. So
and now I'm thinking, like, am I going to have to go out and date? Colin told me that.
Just a little nudge. Just a little nudge. At least it'll be fun to talk about, like all the you know, lots of content.
Yeah.
You gonna say something, Armando?
Yeah. No, I was just gonna say when like. You're totally right. You know, just like a quick ending point. When I met my wife, I wasn't like actively like, okay, now it's relationship time. I was like, I was already doing things. I had a routine. When we started dating, she was in law school, and we both set a precedent openly with each other where I was like, hey, I might call you at 3-4 in the morning because I'm out doing comedy. And that's my schedule. And during the day, I try to get my rest. And this is when I do this, and this is when I do that. And she was like, okay, cool, because this is my study time, and this is my workout time. It was very much like, this is what I do, and you know, this is my schedule, and this is what you're walking into. And that, not only just like, oh, this is, I didn't just say, oh, this is relationship time. I wasn't necessarily looking for one, but I wasn't necessarily not either. It's you know, it's just by happenstance, it's all happening at the same time. And then on top of that, being deliberate about like, this is what you're walking into. Here's the expectation. Don't set them higher. Don't set them lower. This is where it is right now. And it did make things a lot easier. There was less emotion tied to like, why aren't you texting me? And why aren't you this? And why?
Well, like, my opinion is that if that enters a relationship, in any kind of with any kind of frequency that stays, it's over.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Like, absolutely. For every extra expectation you place on another person, whether that's parents, children, friends, family, lovers, whatever, for every little expectation you place on them, you are eroding trust and love and even long-term sustainability of that relationship. Every single one, right? Like, think about your family of things that have happened. And, you know, like we get into arguments or fights or like some, you know, we hold on to resentment that even to this day, we can think back that event with, you know, a sister or brother or a parent that we still haven't come to terms with, and makes us short with them or makes us like easily tempered with them, which is kind of crazy. Cause it's like that thing that happened 10 years ago now you can annoy me like half the time someone else can. Like that's pretty fucked up if you think about it, right? Yeah, we carry that shit around, you know, and it's, I mean, we make ourselves suffer more than anybody really, but we also make the relationship suffer. And so like, I'm reading a book that everyone should read. It's The Courage to Be Happy, I believe. And the author wrote a book, The Courage to Be Disliked, which is one of my favorite books of all time. You got to listen to it on Audible because they do a very good acting job. But he makes a comment in there where it's based on Adlerian psychology. And he talks about how the most highest form of respect you can give another human is to accept them completely and fully. Which, if you think about it, what is the definition of conditional and unconditional love?
Yeah.
Right. Like unconditional. Almost nobody loves unconditionally. Like it's just very rare. Right.
Yeah.
Like there's always some expectation or whatever.
Correct. And
I'm not suggesting everyone's gonna be perfect at this, but you can definitely aspire to it. So for 2021, one of my goals, and I don't even like the word goal, but like one of my pursuits right now that I'm working on is to cultivate non-response. I want to have no response to my external environment that isn't chosen and run through my framework of like what makes sense here. Like, does yelling at a guy in traffic make any sense? Does it increase my safety or my happiness? Nope, I don't do it. Except like that's my idea of non-response. If somebody snaps at me or partner does this or does that, whatever, is me responding negatively going to help? No, make it worse, make myself worse, right? Anything that disturbs my mental equanimity pretty much is not a good choice. But like, again, it's a scale. Like we're going to make some bad decisions. We're hopefully making more better.
Yeah. And
I think another thing that we should all aspire to is with expectations, having zero expectations, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't mean they're not going to be there and they're going to well in because we're human. But the more you can push towards the zero end of the expectation spectrum, think about it, the happier you're going to be. If you don't have expectations of people, when they do nice things for you, as Crosby did, a friend of ours, she raised $1,000 for our house flooding recently on Venmo.
That's awesome.
People just sent her $1,000, right?
Jeez.
And we've been like bouncing around Airbnbs and everything, right? And it's like, we didn't ask her to do that. It's amazing. And we're totally grateful for her. And it's like, if I had this expectation that all my friends should help me or do something, I would basically be setting myself up for suffering because there's no way anyone's going to live up to that expectation because I always find some reasons why they didn't live up to it.
Yeah.
And this is more true than ever when it comes to your romantic partners. And like, we take it to another degree. It's terrible. And you see parents do with kids too. And there's a lot of bad behaviors and bad parenting that come out as a result of that, or trying to impress their friends or whatever. So zero expectations should be like one of those things that we all strive for. Right. And I think non-response to anything external should be something we strive for as well.
Absolutely.
I like that.
So this has been a great chat, everybody. Natalie, where can people find you online?
They can find me at Power in Numbers, and that's power.in.numbers with the number 0, not the letter 0 on Instagram.
Jason, our editor, he'll find that and put the link there for everyone in case they can't find that. Natalie, we'd love to have you on more frequently. Remember, we do the live show every Wednesday. As of right now, it is Armando and I, and you're welcome to hop in anytime and chat and share some of your new dating experiences that you now are compelled to go on.
Thanks for that.
I want to hear about that.
It's funny because there's been a couple of people who've brought that up as of recently. So I'm like, this is the 3rd time. So messages come in 3 and I'm like, damn it. This is the universe trying to tell me something here.
Well, but again, we're not telling you to get in a relationship or like, there's no expectation other than to just make sure that if it's an important part of your life, like anything else, you're developing it. That's kind of the way to think about it.
Oh, I like that.
If it's an important part of your life, you should be developing it. And as it comes to like the idea of finding the right mate, well, it's a freaking numbers game, right? That's why everyone has at least 10 numbers. Everyone's got at least 10 relationships that like didn't work out before they maybe hopefully find one, right? Like that's just like, it just seems like it's an average or whatever. So this has been awesome. I got to go. I got a meeting. Everybody, thank you for this. Subscribe, guys. Colin.coach, and then get on the Better Human newsletter over at Colin.coach as well. And then follow Natalie and support her and send her a DM wishing her at a girl. Go get them.
Thanks. Bye, guys.
See you guys.
Thanks, guys.